What's up, beautiful creators? Today we're talking about the Sirui 40mm t1.8 autofocus anamorphic lens and why I think that this is one of the best everyday anamorphic lenses that you can own. So let's get into it.
Content creation starts with one thing: documenting. The small, seemingly insignificant moments we capture now holds more value. It's like running. At first, it feels tough, like you're pushing yourself just to keep going. You find your rhythm, you find your groove. It's not about speed, it's not about distance. It's about consistency. You just have to show up and do the work. And then one day, it all changes. You don't even realize it at first. You're going, you're grinding, you're pushing, and somewhere along the way, you've leveled up. You're better, stronger. You've built something real, and it's all happening without you even stopping to catch your breath. The real question is, when do you give yourself permission to pause? The biggest similarity between running and content creation? Your body will tell you when you need a break, and if you don't listen, burnout will come. And that's something no one talks about enough. So remember, keep going, keep creating, but don't forget to take a moment to rest.
So right off the bat, what caught my attention was the build and quality of the lens itself. Very compact, very lightweight in comparison to the pro anamorphics like your Panavisions and your Blazars, which is great for, being able to rig a little bit more, whether you go handheld or you're rigging to a car. And the fact that it is autofocus, you don't have to worry about trying to have a focus puller if you are using like a Ronin or something like that, because you can use the autofocus feature to be able to focus on what you need to focus on. I really like the matte black finish. I like the reflectiveness that you get, so when light hits it, it has this beautiful gloss to it, even though it's like a matte black. The focus gears, everything about it is just quality. I love the engraving aspect with the hint of blue from their brand. On the lens itself, the D-click switch that allows you to turn it on or off, so you can turn it on, which gives you more of a precise stop, or you can turn it off for more of a smoother stop and a more quiet stop. And then on the other side, you have your option and your switch to do autofocus or manual focus, and you also have your autofocus lock. So as far as the characteristics of this particular anamorphic lens, now I really like the characteristics because I think it provides a natural everyday look, and that is the whole point of the video. You're not gonna get your chromatic aberrations or your distortions, which is a pro to me because it allows your characters or the things that you're shooting to be presented in a more natural and organic feel than having too much character and then you can't tone that down. First and foremost, you have an option to pick which flare you want. You can go towards a blue flare and that blue streak, or you can go more towards a warm neutral flare. Now, I opted for the neutral flare because, again, we want this to be every day, and I feel like that blue streak gives more of a sci-fi, music video, particular project type of feel, as opposed to the neutral flare giving a everyday warmth that I would want to go for with my particular projects. And I can always expound upon that by adding a filter to give the blue streak or whatever that may be. So having a good foundation was important to me, and I felt to go more of the natural neutral way for that particular foundation. Now, when it comes to the bokeh, it has its own distinct bokeh. When you stay at a wide open, which is a 1.8 for this particular lens, you're gonna get all the characteristics that this lens has to offer, including the hexagonal elliptical bokeh that you get from it. Now, as you go down to 2.2, 2.4, 2.8, you start to get the normal oval-like bokeh that you see in other anamorphics. But that hexagonal really adds its own distinct character, which I really, really like. And I thought it was really dope. And you can see it a lot in the beauty shots that I took of some of my friends. With the lights in the back, you can see the bokeh. And then sometimes you can even see a mixture of the hexagonal bokeh as well as the oval shaped bokeh. And so I love the distinct detail that they put into the bokeh, but not just that, just the overall detail of this lens is immaculate. Now, when you look at the shallow depth of field from this, it's great. And I'm shooting on a Sony Fx3 with this and staying wide open. So of course I have an ND on there. But the shallow depth of field is beautiful, but the detail from the focus fall off is crazy. And so you have the detail in the hair and the shirt, the shoulders, all of that. But it falls off instantly to where you can really get captivating beauty shots. And even though it's not your typical 50 or 85, which is what you are normally used for beauty shots, you can really get some beautiful portraits from this 40 millimeter focal length, and because of the detail and the focus fall off. And so I just thought that was very interesting to see from this focal length. And I felt like the detail and the sharpness that it gave you, it was just enough. And so I was a big fan of just seeing that. And not just to mention with the T1.8, it's great in low light. Again, working with the Sony Fx3 with this T.18 anamorphic lens, it's a powerhouse in low light settings. And after set each day, I would try to shoot with it and just seeing what it can do in low light and pairing it to the characteristics of the bokeh, the shallow depth of field, all of those things. I got some really beautiful images of just highlighting the texture and the color and the light and just the light that can come in, just the everything, the bokeh, everything about the characteristics was just so beautiful for everyday documenting while I was down there in South Africa. And not to mention, I was also shooting on set, which I can't show any of that footage, but the fact that they were shooting with Panavision anamorphics with a 1.33 squeeze. I was shooting with this Sirui anamorphic with a 1.33 squeeze. So it's going to be great being able to see how they pair my BTS footage with the actual footage from the film. But overall, the characteristics are beautiful for a nice, organic, natural, everyday feel, which is why I feel like this is going to be a really good go-to for an everyday anamorphic lens. Now, there are two cons when it comes to this lens that I do want to talk about. One, the biggest being the focus. Now, it does have autofocus, which is great. We are in this wave, in this era of anamorphics now adding autofocus. And so being able to have that has been a plus with shooting on set, but also when I'm shooting myself. But it does have a lot of focus breathing issues. It hunts a little like crazy, but when it does find it, it does really well. But the hunting is crazy. Now, because I use the autofocus, but I also use a manual focus, autofocus wasn't a huge deal to me. It was a plus being able to have the option to autofocus. But I am a manual focus girly, so it wasn't that much of a big deal to me. But if autofocus is huge to you, you may want to kind of play around with it, or just even look at some other reviews from other YouTubers to see if it's your vibe and it's your style, and if maybe it's just a user error. I've only had it for a month. I'm still learning it. It could be a user error, but that was a con for me with a lot of the hunting and focus breathing when shooting myself. And then the other con would be the fact that it says that it's a Super 35 lens. Now, I have the FX30, which is what this is. And I shot with both the FX3 and the FX30 just to kind of see, how it would look on both of them. And it was an extreme crop on the FX30. So I was very surprised to see that it cropped on the FX30 when it's supposed to be a Super 35 lens. Now, I don't know what that looks like with it being Super 35 and this being a crop sensor and what that entails. I'm not a technical person, but just seeing the example and seeing how it cropped, that might be a con for people who own the FX30 and actually wanted that 40 millimeter focal length. So you may have to take some steps back or really figure out if that's the lens for you. Again, this is all first impression of testing it for a month and trying to play with it when I can. So it could be a user error. If it is, let me know. Don't go crazy. But if it's not, these are some of the things that I just found out. Now, other things to note is, one, if you do want to use the auto feature on the lens itself and you do have an FX3 or FX30 or whatever that may be, you cannot use the de-squeeze viewing option on the camera when you want to use autofocus. You have to turn that off in order to use autofocus, or get an external monitor to where you can de-squeeze on the monitor and then still use the autofocus on the actual camera. Another thing to know is if you are using Premiere, which I use, so I can only speak for Premiere, they do have an option, which is a one-click for you literally to convert it to anamorphic and de-squeeze it in Premiere, which is great. So the workflow of using anamorphic is easy. And I wanted to make that note because this is my first time owning an anamorphic, and it can be intimidating for people who may not know how to work with it in post. So I just wanted to make that note that it's fairly easy to work with it in post and de-squeeze and get the look that you want to get in post. So that is pretty much all my opinions on this lens and why I feel like it is a really great everyday anamorphic. I want to start really playing around with my look for documenting my life and documenting other things. And I always wanted to get in anamorphic, and I feel like this was a really great entry into it. And so if you are looking to get into using anamorphic lenses and you do want to have your own set, I would definitely look into the Sirui. I think it's affordable. It's a great everyday. It has beautiful characteristics for everyday, and you can expound upon that as you choose. So let me know your thoughts. Leave them down in the comments below. Make sure that you all like this video, share with your friends, and if you have questions, also let me know. Make sure you're subscribed. I love you all, and of course, I'll see you in the next video.